Hi, I'm Tommy Gantz. I'm the Director of Tax and Fiscal Policy for the Association of Washington Business. I have over 20 years of experience in supply chain throughout several industries. One thing that remains consistent among those various industries is the management of the supply chain. The supply chain is the sequence of processes that are involved in the production and distribution of goods or products, and managing that sequence of processes is called supply chain management. There's a very good reason that you may want to understand how to manage your supply chain activities. A business needs to maximize customer value and achieve a sustainable competitive advantage. Managing the various areas of your supply chain is a conscious effort to develop and run your supply chains in the most effective and efficient way possible. Supply chain activities can cover everything from product development to sourcing, to production, to logistics, as well as the information systems that is needed to coordinate these activities. This can encompass a program as simple as Excel or consist of more complex resource planning systems. Supply chain management operates at 3 levels: strategic, tactical, and operational. At the strategic level, company management makes high-level strategic supply chain decisions that are relevant to the whole organization. The decisions that are made with regard to supply chain should reflect the overall strategy that the organization is trying to achieve. The strategic supply chain processes should cover the extensiveness of the supply chain. These strategies should focus on product development, customers, manufacturing, vendors, and logistics. If your product is more complex, engineering may be the entryway to your supply chain. It's important to understand if the product is viable before beginning the sourcing process. Every company also needs a strategy on how to manage their resources in order to achieve their customers' demand for their products. Optimally, you should develop a set of metrics to monitor how your supply chain is doing so that your business can deliver high-quality products to your customer. Data metrics are an important part of the supply chain process, but be careful to ensure that you're focusing on the right data points. With the massive volume of data out there for businesses today, it's very easy to get sidetracked by focusing on the wrong data elements. To create their products, a company needs to be very careful when choosing their suppliers. It's important to make sure that you and your supplier align on things like your ethics. Companies should also develop a set pricing and delivery system in the supply chain. They can also put processes in place for managing their goods and goods inventory. In manufacturing, the supply chain manager should always schedule activities that are needed for production, packaging, testing if it's something that's required, and preparation for delivery. Measuring production output and measuring those levels is the most metric-intensive portion of the supply chain. Delivering the product is mainly referred to as logistics by supply chain management. In this case, companies will coordinate receipts of orders, pick carriers to get products to customers, and some larger companies will even develop a network of warehouses to optimize this. In many companies, returns on non-conforming products is usually where the problem is in their supply chain. The planner should create flexible and responsible networks for receiving flaws and excess products that has been sent back to them from their customers. Every aspect of the supply chain is important. The businesses that reach optimum efficiency will actually realize benefits from the factors that have positively improved their supply chain. Business competition is a factor that often can drive the supply chain. In smaller business settings, the likelihood of your competitor having the same time, money, and resources to implement a strategy the same way you would is very small. But every company has different resources and structures that make their supply chain work for their unique needs. If you're working for a larger organization, the business competition factor can be a major driver in the strategy. A business supply chain can be influenced by the industry that they're in. For example, heavily regulated industries like aerospace and pharmaceuticals must often consider the regulatory compliance of the product into account throughout their supply chain processes. An effective supply chain, regardless of any specific factors, is important. They change all the time, therefore they have to be evaluated independently from one another at any given point in time. No two supply chains are exactly the same, So there's an infinite number of ways that companies can operate. As a small business, there may be only one person that is responsible for managing the entire process. But as your business grows and becomes more complex, there may need to be a subject matter expert that's brought into the organization to perform these tasks. One major challenge that happens as an organization grows is that each area of the supply chain can become siloed or segmented. Oftentimes, there will become a disconnect and a lack of understanding between both the various segments of the supply chain and by non-supply chain personnel. For example, a salesperson selling the final product may not understand that all areas of the supply chain should be consulted to understand if the product is truly viable. Engineering may share with the sales team that the product's okay from their perspective, but if the salesperson fails to understand that the materials needed to create the product, you can't source them, the product's not really viable and ultimately would be unavailable to the customer. This disconnect can create tremendous challenges for an organization. A supply chain is like instruments playing in an orchestra. A well-orchestrated supply chain will function fluidly and beautifully. Disconnected elements of the supply chain are like instruments playing out of step with the rest of the symphony. Regardless of the size of your business, it's important to understand your place in the market and use that to develop procurement strategies. Most importantly, identify strong suppliers and cultivate those relationships. I cannot overstate this. As we discussed earlier, develop quantitative and qualitative metrics to manage your suppliers. Finally, and most importantly, manage risk in the extended supply chain and build a responsive supply chain by using all available data and market intelligence to help you get your customers the product they need in the most efficient way possible. I hope you found my tips helpful. Look forward to the next one.